Welcome to this interactive session provided by Microsoft at our Cyber Tech and Risk Trusted Cloud Virtual Conference. As you can see, we already have our session leader, Nehal Shah, Senior Security Technical Specialist from Microsoft is there. So and Nehal will lead this session. Okay, Nehal, all yours.
All right, thank you, Brian. So just going to start in, I'm going to give in 1 minute or so, hopefully, hello everyone. So I'll just do a little bit of introduction and then I'll start over. So my name is Nehal Shah. I'm a technical specialist, security technical specialist at Microsoft. I've been, I work with all the large organizations all across Canada in terms of Defender for kind of everything. So today I'm going to be speaking about protecting your resources in the cloud, and with special focus on Defender for Cloud, and talking all about how we can do the multi-cloud capabilities. So it's the whole posture from a multi-cloud security. That's what I'm going to be going through. So yeah, let's just get into the presentation. I can see people are joining. So let me start off and I'll just go through in terms of what I'm going to be going through in this session. So I'm going to be going over through in terms of an overview of Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and a special focus on the multi-cloud from a multi-cloud security perspective. I'll focus in more on the AWS GCP support, the native support, and then the cloud security posture management CSPM capabilities for both AWS and GCP. And the same with the workload protection capabilities. I will be talking about from an Azure capability too, but focus more on the other clouds as well. So how we bring it all together. At the end, I'm going to do like a demo, and then we'll break up for Q&A. So how the session would probably run is I would finish off the slides and the demo, and then we can leave the Q&A for later. So if there are any questions, you can put it in the chat, but I'll address them at the end of the session. Okay, so let's start off in terms of why security hygiene should be the #1 priority. So there's a couple of things. So there's in the recent news, in the last couple of years, there have been lots of issues from hackers attacking vulnerabilities. So when we look at the entire capabilities, you see one of the sessions you reach the news, Palo Alto Networks repents, hygiene, poor security hygiene through closed cloud vulnerabilities. So everyone should be, aware of this from that standpoint. So if you look at this news article, there's, over 200,000 insecure templates. 43% of cloud databases are not encrypted. These are, facing the internet, and 60% of cloud storage is, don't have any logging enabled. So this is kind of a big concern for large organizations. We've just come out from a pandemic, coronavirus. They share the same thing as we talk about it, a common weakness. Good hygiene. So wherever your workloads are, whichever cloud, so Azure, GCP, Amazon, you need to have a good hygiene posture from a cloud perspective. You can see from all this other imposes, challenges for governments, critical for cyber hygiene. And when we talk about all this security hygiene, how do you monitor? How does organizations go about monitoring this capability? And there was a cyber attack on the Florida's water treatment, and what does it mean for global organizations? So from that standpoint, it's like a wake-up call, and saying that in the last few years, when we moved from on-prem and then remote work and hybrid work, this brings on kinds of challenges. So in terms of organizations, they have to look at it from a global perspective, what it means. Whether you're a small organization or a large organization, you need to have good security hygiene. And that kind of moves into how we talk about cloud security challenge. So in the recent while, we've shifted to the cloud. It's become a strategic direction for most organizations, but at the same time, when you're moving to the cloud, it comes with a set of unique challenges. So a couple of challenges, which the three I've mentioned over here in terms of security compliance, sophistication of attacks, and then in terms of complexity of managing the um, environments. So how we look into this, if you look at visibility and compliance, the number of security alerts and alerting systems basically outnumbers the number of administrators you have. So you have thousands and thousands of alerts coming up, but you have a small security team. How do you guys maintain this? So how do you actually, which platform, which tools can you leverage to actually see that you ensure that your environments are protected? Also having end-to-end um, end-to-end visibility into all your workloads as well. So it could be through security, it could be through compliance, or all capabilities. And it's making it very impossible to stay in place while it's ever front changing. So that's one of the big challenges. um, the second big challenge is in terms of increasing of the attacks, so sophistication of attacks. Now, wherever you run your workloads, whichever cloud, on-prem as well, attacks are getting sophisticated. In the old days, we used to have, the script kiddies and stuff trying to, create, hack and just do malicious stuff. Now it's more like espionage and hacking into like voting systems and ransomware and etc. So now you have to make sure that you keep sure that you secure your public clouds. But while that is affected, all the internet facing workloads, they are even more vulnerable because you have to follow the secure kind of best practice, and that comes again to the security hygiene. And then the last piece is the complex environments. Now a lot of organizations, a lot of my customers we work with is managing multi-cloud environments. No one is, very few just do Azure on its own, or GCP or AWS. You have your workloads are all across the organizations. So you can see from 92% of organizations embrace the multi-cloud strategy. Now when you that is a strength, is both a strength and a challenge, because you've got capability. You've given the users to empowered to do a lot more, because you can leverage multiple clouds. But how do you make sure that every area, what you all your workloads and changing services are all secure? So how does that address? So these are kind of challenges when you're moving to a strategic direction to move to the cloud. So what this comes up is, I want to, before I go into a little bit more in detail, I want to just talk about the cloud kill chain model. So I have four, when you look at this, we look at a four-step process. We look at from an exposure, access, lateral movements, and action. So how does this, from an attacker perspective, whether it's when attackers are attacking your cloud infrastructure, they often do it with attack multiple resources at the same time. Now, how do they get access to your environment through your through the public cloud? So first where they look for is exposure. So configurations, you have configurations where you are in terms of you have bad settings, or bad settings on your virtual machines which are facing the cloud, or bad settings on your applications or your storage accounts, things from that nature. These applications, as they are exposed to the internet, they are more susceptible to attacks. They will attempt to find vulnerabilities and exploit this through credentials. So if they are exposed credentials, or compromised users or open entry points, from a network perspective. That's how the exposure starts. Now, once they've got gain access and see what type of vulnerabilities there are, they'll try to access your assets. So things like your virtual machines, your IoT devices, your apps, um, could be your credentials, and that's where identity from everything starts at the beginning from an identity perspective. So they gain access uh, to the to your environment, and then they exploit those vulnerabilities. It could be, once you've exposed those um, the credentials, you can actually start, they can do brute force and then forcibly trying to do lateral movements. So then after they've got access to your devices or got through to your internal network, then it's basically in terms of how do I move in terms of lateral movement. So attackers may discover your domain controllers. What access do you have? If it's an infected admin, which admin access has that, which applications you have. And then it's very difficult if you didn't have a tool to actually monitor your entire assets and infrastructure to actually see where is the attackers going. So it's very different in from a breach perspective. For example, if you didn't have any tools, it takes approximately 100 days for a breach to be found out, but it only takes 24 to 48 hours after an attacker has got access to your network. Then the last portion is actions. So what does the attacker do after the lateral movement? It's basically gain access to your data. They do data exfiltration. There's a lot of ransomware, resource abuse capabilities. So that's what, from an hacker perspective, that's what they would go in, and there's a lot of large financial implication from their actions. There was an average which they say there is approximately $1.2 million dollars just from an actions perspective. So that brings us to Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So from an attack chain point, we've seen the capability. So for Defender for Cloud now brings this solution and brings this, addresses those issues which I mentioned earlier, the challenges which we faced. So it actually brings a cloud secure posture management and the workload protection capabilities. It finds weak spots across your organization. It can protect against your workloads in the multi-cloud as well. It's not all about Azure. It's across the board, as you can see, like Azure, AWS, and Google. It supports on-prem as well. So it's a hybrid cloud. So it's not only about cloud devices. You can manage your on-prem devices as well. And all for this, you can actually do the last part is getting this information is great, but how do you respond and automate? So if you have thousands and thousands of alerts and incidences happening, how do you go about fixing them? How do you automate it? And from that standpoint. So this built-in tool is provides threat protection as well for all your Azure on-prem and other cloud providers. We can protect different services. So um, we're not only talking about virtual machines. We can do other workloads, storage accounts. We can do containers. We can do multiple other threats, and provide a complete single pane of glass for your entire from an asset perspective. That's not all. It can also manage and unmanage IoT devices and OT devices for continuously discovery as well. So that capability comes in as well. So from here, when we look at it, we look at three places, as I mentioned. We look at the hardening and maintain your security posture. So that's like making sure that you have good security hygiene, your configuration capabilities. Then you have the detection and protection of your workload. So any threats and stuff, you get automated full threat protection and vulnerability management and assessment. and then how you go responding with those capabilities. So when we look at the holistic management of your entire posture in the cloud, there are a couple of things four kind of pillars we look at. So it's basically in terms of resource visibility, secure score, compliance, and data. And I'm going to drill down each one individually. So just very briefly, resource visibility is more to do with how do you manage all your cloud inventory? How do I go and see everything? What is there in the cloud? What are the resources? What assets do I have? Secure score is basically in terms of bottom line of your posture. How are your recommendations? Are you implemented best practices? How do you monitor it over time? Compliance, how do you enforce organizational policies? And then the data security capabilities. How do you connect with your sensitive data and critical resources? So when we look at the security dashboard, and during the demo, I'll actually go through and show you this live so you can actually see some of the capabilities from the Defender for Cloud. So from a security dashboard perspective, we have visibility directly into entire in one place. So AWS, Azure, and GCP all in one place. And then you have focused views. So you can actually go in, I only want to see AWS, or I only want to see GCP. I can actually do filtering and go through down a little bit more deep down in terms of the resource inventories and workload protections and more. But also on the top side, you can actually see top insights front and center. So this gives you things, regulatory compliance or inventory or firewall management, all those capabilities on the dashboard. You'll be able to see what resources are most attacked, how do you take action, and that. Now, Secure Score, you must be familiar with Secure Score if working with Microsoft products. It's been there from all the other products. Secure Score. It's a centralized view of tracking and mechanisms that show like the current security state of your cloud environment. So how does that work? It assesses the best practices, security compliance. We have covers all the critical workloads. So when we talk about critical workloads, if you look at the evaluated categories, we are also talking about the compute. So the virtual machines. We can look SQL servers, IoT devices, network services, containers, this and many more. Some of them there, and we have over 450 kind of recommendations out of the box. You could also create custom recommendations based on your organizational requirements. And when you have some kind of recommendations, you can also remediate with a quick fix, single click, and it runs some automations and fixes the issue. From an inventory view, we have now, this is a single view of all monitored resources. So it doesn't matter where, if it's a virtual machine or a SQL server or a container, we can see everything all in one. And then in terms of filtering, so you can easily filter and cross-reference stuff directly. And during the demo, I'll actually showcase that capability. If I want to only see particular pieces, like let's say from a MITRE framework, we want to see initial access or lateral movement. I could actually scroll down and go those things. You can also do continuously exploration with the Azure Graph and export. So you can run the queries through KQL and manage and export to CSV, and you can even export to other capabilities from a reporting perspective. And then from in terms of management of resources. What about now? Let's talk a little bit about compliance and assessment of your workloads. Security assessments mapped to different compliance controls. So we have different industry standards across. Different organizations have different. Banking will have different from manufacturing, will have different from healthcare, depending on what type of assessments and management. We can have regulatory compliance frameworks and implement security and best practices. So, by default, uh, Defender for Cloud uses Azure Security Benchmark that's enabled, and all the recommendations are set from that. But you can enable, support for CIS or NIST, for example. I can turn it on, and it would give me the recommendations based from that standpoint. The dashboard is also dynamic, so when you can set certain ones or disable certain ones, so you and go from there. And reports can be downloaded as well based on what you choose from a PDF perspective or a detailed CSV capability. Now, from a organizational perspective, this is great because it's a security basic. You need to know where you are. So we set this from that, and any additions which come to this from a compliance perspective, the standards will be updated from a product perspective. Last but not least is, identify sensitive data. So we integrate with Microsoft Purview in terms of from a cloud resources perspective, but what type of data is, sensitive? So, you have credit card information, or you have certain kind of SIN number. What type of data is visible outside on a data level? So we integrate with from a data governance perspective. And when you integrate this capability, you have more visibility down to the data, enabling the priority. So from the cloud's posture management, all this information protection capability tile is included in the dashboard. So you can actually see from the cover and the graph where the number of recommendations and classified resource types are. Security alerts, we have two types of security alerts as well, where you have data sensitivity classifications and sensitive labels as well. So that's capable from that standpoint. So now let's talk a little bit about, we've been looking at things from looking at it from the posture management, and now let's a little bit go down into the actual workloads and threats. So one of the things we'll talk about in terms of is, protection of threat protection across all levels. So it's good to know, yes, I need to be secure here, or I need to have these best practices. But how do I get also alerts where, threat protection? How do I on my devices and stuff? So here we treat protection on all levels. So comprehensive set of alerts, it's all mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. We're using, the Microsoft Threat Intelligence, our threat intelligence and experts and industry standard vulnerability management across the board. So we break it down into a couple of pieces, like, threat detection. We do in terms of MITRE ATT&CK framework, and then leading threat intelligence capabilities. We have vulnerability management, so the VM capabilities with also from a server perspective, the threat vulnerability management with additional with Qualys as well, and then alert correlations with in terms of incident graphs as well. So in terms of when we talk about on-prem and on workplaces, you just meet, again, this is very important where we talk about the workloads in the cloud and on-prem. So it's not only in the cloud, we're talking across the board and on-prem as well. So it's built in managing and seeing those workloads and protecting, but then how do I integrate with my SIEM? So for easy management, you can actually go through, easy connectivity to, Sentinel and go from there and pump in all the attacks, and then you can actually view everything in your SIEM as well. From a security alerts and incidents page, we'll be able to showcase those alerts. And when I go through the demo, I'll go through a little bit more details. What are the detected resources? what is the smart alert correlation. So if there are multiple alerts, they can be combined into one incident kind of capability, low fidelity, and then managing these incidences from a central view. So, I've been talking about, what Microsoft Defender for Cloud does, but there's a lot more when we talk about full stack coverage, we're talking about multiple layers. So it protects a wide variety of workloads in Azure and native to AWS and GCP. So in traditionally, system high critical workloads like servers, containers, we monitor them at a service level perspective. Uh, we can talk about we have additional capabilities to monitor things like Azure Resource Manager, for example. And then so here we can see from a compute perspective, from a service level and database storage, and then also in the different workloads in the different clouds as well, and then on premises as well. That's not all. When we do some of the protection and advanced intelligence protection, you can see you can enable for particular PCs only. So let's say if I didn't want to enable for everything, I wanted storage only, I could enable storage, or I could enable servers, depending on what capabilities. It's just a turn on, and you can enable, it will start monitoring and collecting information. And one of the questions would be in terms of how do I manage workloads anywhere. So it wouldn't be there wouldn't be any place without mentioning Azure Arc. So you leverage Azure Arc to connect workloads anywhere to Microsoft Defender for cloud. So it unlocks the hybrid multi-cloud scenarios for your on-prem capabilities and resources in a consistent way. The extension installation is very simple, the log analytics, and then enforces compliance. You have from an Azure capability, you can view from a text perspective, but the best piece from it is from a server side capabilities. You can manage the compliance by RBAC policies in Azure. So I'm going to go quickly into how to protect now focus more on AWS and GCP. So, again, as I mentioned earlier, we look at not only Azure across the board and seamless automation, there's agentless design. So in terms of implementing it is very easy. And then there's also easy onboarding of AWS and GCP accounts. So we have everything across the board, native, bird's eye view. We protect Amazon EKS and GCK clusters. From a GCP perspective, VM instances, and then also the EC2 from a AWS perspective. We detect and block like malware from Linux running on those in the cloud and on-prem perspective. Enabling the account is basically connecting very fast. You onboard a single or auto provision and basically enable it. Then the Defender plans, as I showed you earlier, are not dependent. So you can, CPS me, like it's the kind of enable that cloud posture management only. Same with GCP projects. You can enable them, go into the project level granularity. I'll showcase some of the capabilities, and then from that standpoint. And then there's the Defender plans, as mentioned. So the last piece I want to talk about is, the posture management capabilities, and then I'll go to the workloads. So our posture management capabilities is built from a cloud perspective, is API based. Recommendations, we have assessments. Logic is all based with KQL, so Kusto query language. AWS and GCP have security recommendations, and we keep on adding more and more. It's not like we are stuck at this. We are adding more, and then also more from a resource type perspective. We are adding more resources and stuff. And then we built in also in terms of regulatory compliance standards, we've added those built-in capabilities. From a compliance perspective, it's same enabled by default, as I mentioned. It maps to MITRE framework, and then you have overall reports for compliance. And then from a custom assessments, so you could create custom assessment and standards based on your query languages or build your own compliance benchmarks as well. So it's not like what we provide, that's it. You can add additional capabilities. And the same thing in terms of the entire inventory you can explore and stuff. From an automation perspective, this is important where, when I mentioned earlier that you have quick fixes. So in terms of from a quick fix recommendation perspective, we have one-click capabilities, but then you can also have automated responses with Azure Logic Apps and stuff, from and connect directly. You can connect to Outlook, Slack, ServiceNow, what you want, or you can have continuous export to Event Hub or Log Analytics, and then export it elsewhere if you need to the SIEM or export to CSV capabilities. From a cloud, let's talk a little bit about from a cloud workload perspective, posture map. So we have, Defender for servers. So we expanded our expanded services offering to AWS. Again, gives you a single pane, security baselines, OS assessments, capabilities, leveraging the Azure Arc platform. But you can see on the right-hand side, we have all the capabilities and on-prem machines, IaaS, and previews from that standpoint. From a Defender for Services perspective, this is just how we look at allowed lists. These capabilities, it complements again with EDR capabilities from a platform, and we'll use advanced protection and detection capabilities from machine learning. And it does, integration with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint MDE from that standpoint. From a protect the workloads perspective, this is a very high level from across the board. What do we protect from a server perspective? And this is one piece I've just gone on server, and I'll go through maybe on SQL or some other capabilities, and then go into the demo. But here we can see the server hygiene, secure visibility, and the capabilities of each one of them. So how does each of those categories are evaluated? And it all integrates with from an inventory perspective, from the inventory and compliance benchmarks. The one piece I want to talk about as part of the Defender for Servers vulnerability, we have vulnerability scanners, automated vulnerability scanners on all your VMs, and visibility on all your VMs, Linux and virtual machines. And it's powered by Qualys and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Then we have, in terms of Defender for Endpoint, when it detects the advanced protection capabilities. So in terms of the adaptive applications, the just-in-time capabilities, and then, like file monitoring and docking. So I'm just going to go into, talk about a little bit about the adaptive controls. So this is application. So even, potential malware even that have been missed by anti-malware software. So is it outdated, unsupported versions of applications? So if you want to identify all the applications and application governance controls, this is part of Defender for Cloud. We have just-in-time virtual machine access. You can lock down inbound traffic's capabilities from a network perspective, and also adaptive network hardening capabilities. We also look at, in terms of the file integrity monitor, and also the Docker hardening capabilities from unmanaged hosts from Linux VMs and stuff. And then the last piece, and then I can go into from a demo perspective, is detection and response. Is more about the threat detection and the in terms of auditing and fileless attacks, for example. So how does it do detect on different information, and it gives you detailed information about all the systems. So let me jump into from a demo perspective. Just gonna switch over here. So see the screen. So here, from a demo perspective, when I log into Defender for Cloud, the first capabilities it gives me is in terms of the overall posture and the dashboard. So here I can see the security posture, and I can see my different clouds. So Azure, AWS, I can go in. It gives me some basic information about how many accounts, AWS accounts, GCP, how many assessed resources, what are the active recommendations, and security alerts. So you can see the security posture. It gives me the regulatory compliance, what I'm compliant out of how many, um, standards and controls, and how do I improve this? From that standpoint, if I scroll down, I'll be able to see my workload protection. So 99 protect, severity, how many, high alerts, and then inventory, how do I protect my resources? And then on the right hand side, I have additional capabilities. It is giving me information, upgrade to the new plan if there's, new capabilities. So that's from an overview, and I'll go into each one in depth. I just want to go through the actual dashboard and the console itself from that standpoint. So in getting started, it tells you how do I go about, how do I embrace the capabilities. But then the one which I'm interested is more about like from a recommendations perspective. So here I can see recommendations, secure recommendations, and it will break them down and what's the current score and how I can improve over time, unhealthy resources, and also gives me insights. On the top right hand corner, I can say if I'm not only interested in in Azure, I can uncheck AWS and just give me information regarding which of my clouds I want. We have the capabilities. It gives me controls, recommendations. I can go into, say, remediate vulnerabilities. I can go in. They should have machines, should have a vulnerability findings resolved. You can go in, drill down, and you can drill down additional capabilities and see what update, .NET framework update capabilities high. And I can click on this, and it will give me additional information about the systems, and I can go in and view it. The other piece I wanted to talk about is the filtering capabilities. So you have one way of here to filter between the different clouds, but I can also do additional filters where I can say I only want, let's say I want tactics, so the MITRE tactics, and I only want lateral and initial. And based on this, I would get what are my recommendations based on the those capabilities, and it gives me an entire view of my of all my assets in the cloud. And then if I drill down secure management ports, it will tell me 33 of these machines. I can go in and actually go further in and go into my resources and see what the information is, and go down directly to the Defender for Cloud and give me all the information. What are my high install endpoint protection? And all those recommendations, when I actually go in, it will open up from that standpoint. Now, depending on the virtual machine, I would go in and route. I could install it directly over here from the console. I don't need to go anywhere else. I want to show you. So that was recommendations. We can do security alerts. So how many alerts are there? We can see, in terms of the security alerts map, where we can actually view in terms of where the alerts are coming from, and then which IP addresses, capabilities, and you can drill down which are the high severity, and you can see the posture management from that standpoint. We can see in terms of, if there's anything high, how do I go look at it? What are the machines? It gives me more details, and I can view few details, or I can also take action. Depending on actions, I can prevent. How do I want to take action? Inspect. It gives me, information on how to leverage it and how to configure the response. Going back into alerts, the other piece where we can go into is you have the basic filtering again. You have the filtering, what are the tags? If it's a, a user account, is it a device, a tactic, all those capabilities you can add and you'll leverage over here and see the entire kill chain, where it is in that. And also from a resources perspective, you can see that from Azure, GCP, or from a AWS perspective. Same with all the inventory capabilities. You can see, how many resources are managed, how many are unhealthy, what's installed, what's not installed. You can add none, Azure servers, and you can also do the same drill down in terms of from a capability perspective. So one of the great things about the for Defender for Cloud, we have workloads and stuff. So, this can be public templates or community templates, GitHub, browse the galleries. If I want to see what vulnerabilities I have. So for example, a common one would be, log4j vulnerability. I can run this and I say machines affected by the CVEs. It would give me the counts, the threat, and from a Qualys, a TVM perspective, I can export these capabilities, save it, and pull that as well. So, and then there is the community. This just is basically from an education perspective. It goes into more details about, how to do, isolate, if you want to know additional capabilities. I want to learn about, secure score. So there are videos and stuff, additional learnings. And then there's just diagnose problems as well. From a security perspective, we have like the three workloads that we looked at. So security posture, the regulatory, like this is where I would go in directly. So, I would from here, I'd say from a dashboard perspective, I would go in and explore. So let's say, for example, I do a security posture. It's basically going into the security graph there and telling me, I can choose what are my recommendations. I can filter, I can go drill down further, and it will give me all the recommendations. So manage access or encrypt data in transit, and I click on this, and it gives me unhealthy, and I can actually go in and trigger logic apps. So the good thing about this is from an automation perspective, I can add logic apps. If you're good with, Power Apps and logic apps, you can create these capabilities fairly quickly. Right now, I won't have any over here, but I'll show you in the other place where you have certain logic apps, things like if I want to take this alert and throw it into Jira or ServiceNow or any other capability, I could have that automatically done. I would have the regulatory compliance. So how do I do, how does it work with compliance? So, download your reports, you manage your policies, but you can see that, in my Azure security benchmark, I have V3, which is enabled. This is by default, and I can see, I can expand all, and it will give me all, in terms of the controls and what I need. So is it relating to virtual machines, subnets, storage accounts? And click on it, it will give me additional information about those unhealthy resources and discoveries and stuff. Same with, if I wanted additional capabilities, I would go in and showcase, like if I wanted to do, let's say NIST, for example, it would give me all the NIST, uh, and it's all automatic. And I'll just show you in a bit where to set it up. From a workload protection perspective, we can actually see the capabilities from all the workloads. So, things like advanced protection. So you can see that it's fully covered. Agents, how many agents are not installed? So there's 3.5. I can click on it. It would install the agent on the VMs. From a containers perspective, what's there? Storage accounts, DNS, Key Vault, and this we keep on adding more and more capabilities. But advanced protection, you can actually see how many are not from a security alerts, VM assessment or adaptive application control. So for example, if I go here, what's configured, what's not configured, what's recommended, all those capabilities and no recommendations or missing agents. So I could actually go inside here, connect it directly. You have all these capabilities. It gives me like the most attacked resources. So my ADFS server has, 57 alerts, ADFS private key encryption, extraction. So attempt to actually go in and go through. From a setting perspective, I just want to make sure that from an environment perspective, all I need to do is go into the environment where I've added an environment. I could add services. And when I click on the plans, this is where I would enable the Defender plan. So if I wanted one, I wanted servers, but I didn't want any of the others, I would turn them off. It's basically turn on, turn off capabilities if you have the log agent kept in. How do you do auto provisioning? So when a new VM comes, automatically the log agent connects and pulls all the install the agent, vulnerability assessment capabilities as well. Wanted to showcase, you can have email notifications, but you also have integrations with other Defender products. So from cloud apps and endpoint. So if you have the entire platform. So when we talk about the Defender suite, we look at Microsoft 365 Defender, we're looking at the entire platform. We're not looking at it for, product to product, but this has it's the entire platform comes together and visibility across. From a workflow automation perspective, this is the response I was telling you. So this is something like what happens when there's a security alert. How do I go about it? I could go in and look at the Azure Logic Apps, and I could enable it. I could look into it and even edit it directly and see. So I can view the Logic App capabilities, and it would basically tell me in terms of how do I create it from an app designer perspective. When a response is set, right now that's the connection is broken, but basically when a response is set, it gets the alert, and for each of them send it to Jira. So in terms of the last piece, I want to last two pieces, and then I'll break for Q&A, would be more about like continuously log. If you want to enable export enabled, you can export, and you can export different types. So I want to export everything, or I only want to export certain capabilities. You have that capability of total exposure. From a security policy perspective, remember I mentioned that you can enable different policies. Right now, from the industry standards, by default, the Azure Security Bench will be, enabled, but you could manually add additional ones, and then you can enable them as well. That's similar to, governance rules. So you could add additional rules and add rules, and then, add what the capabilities are, and then save it from a remediation perspective. From a cloud perspective, you can drill down and get different subscriptions, and from a rules perspective, what is there you can break it down and you can save and see this capability, what there is from that standpoint. So I know we're at time right now, so I want to break from here just to give any questions. If not, then I thank you for coming to this session. I hope you got to learn a little bit more about from a defender for cloud perspective, the whole multi-cloud security perspective. Thank you, and have a great afternoon, and we'll see you guys later then. Take care. Thank you.